Record.
Hello, everyone. Today I'll be going over oxygen regulation. So those who have already checked out the previous video, this video will serve as a review and a clarification on a few points because the previous video had a few mishaps in that I'd like to clarify. So feel free to watch this video in 2 times speed, and hopefully it helps you gain a better understanding of this process of oxygen regulation that I'm sure once you understand, it will click and it will stay in your brain forever. Hopefully, I'm able to help with that. So, with that, let's begin. So, we have some voluntary control of our breathing, but it is mostly regulated by our brainstem, specifically the medulla oblongata. And this is the breathing controlling center. And this breathing control center is involuntary, so we cannot control it. We have sensors, mainly for our blood pH, can detect changes in our pH. So that leads to this point right here, where the brain mainly uses cerebral spinal fluid pH as an indicator of blood carbon dioxide concentration. They mainly use this pathway. And a normal pH range for our hemoglobin is a pH of around 7.4. This is known as the happy zone. And we will get into hemoglobin very soon. And another pathway that senses major, like a decrease in blood pH is where, right over here, we have sensors in our aorta, right over here in our heart. And because we have red blood cells there and the flow through of blood, we're able to detect if the oxygen level drops too low. And so then the carotid arteries right here above the aorta signal the medulla to increase the breathing rate and the depth of the breathing rate. So the medulla receives these signals from these big blood vessels, and the medulla oblongata is located right over here, and the cerebral spinal fluid is located here within the brain. And then this causes blood carbon dioxide levels to fall and then the pH to increase, going back to the normal blood happy range of around 7.4. So, what is a hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is the most common iron. It's most common. It's hemoglobin um, is the pigment that causes our blood to have that red color. And iron cofactors are bound to the heme molecule on each subunit. We have 4 subunits, and those subunits carry oxygen. Oxygen is a ligand of hemoglobin, so oxygen will bind right here on its spot in the subunit of the hemoglobin. And when oxygen binds, that increases the affinity of oxygen within the hemoglobin, allowing for hemoglobin to bind to more oxygen until all the binding sites are full. Okay. And then now I will go into our breathing regulation. So when we breathe in, we obtain oxygen within our bloodstream. So we are saturating our blood with oxygen-rich um, molecules, and that oxygen diffuses from high to low concentration. So it diffuses into our red blood cell, where it has lower oxygen concentration initially, and that oxygen flows in, and we have a hemoglobin molecule right over here within our red blood cell. We have many red blood cells and we have many hemoglobin within those many red blood cells. I'm just going to draw one just for the sake of representation and to visualize. Okay, so this hemoglobin binds, the oxygen is able to bind to its subunit um, on the hemoglobin, which increases hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen, and all the sites get bound. Once that gets bound, we also have carbon dioxide that is being produced by cells going through respiration. So in this case, we are breathing in. So over here, I've written that carbon dioxide diffuses into the blood from respiring cells, which then combines with water inside the red blood cell where the cell goes through respiration. So we have our carbon dioxide within the cell, and we also have water. So we have water in our blood vessels, and we also have water within our red blood cell. And so in this combination, you'll see that I'll reference this equation a lot. This chemical equation is in dynamic equilibrium. So it's constantly going from left to right or right to left, depending on our blood pH. And so when you have carbon dioxide combining with hydrogen, you are moving towards the right of the reaction where you will have carbonic acid forming. Carbonic acid acts as like a buffer for our, it's like the middleman of our chemical equation where once we form these two reactants, we get this product of carbonic acid, which helps regulate our blood pH. And in this case, pH will be decreasing because we have bicarbonate as a product and also um, hydrogen ions, also known as protons. And why does pH decrease? Is because when we have that product, after the whole reaction of CO2 combining with water molecules, creating carbonic acid, which then dissociates into bicarbonate and H plus ions. Those H plus ions start to fill up within the cell, and that allows for the pH to decrease. But when our hemoglobin is in an environment where it is slightly acidic than what it's normally used to, it causes hemoglobin to denature. And what does that mean? It means that the hemoglobin, the subunit site, is has its shape changed. So the hemoglobin changes the shape upon denaturation, if that's even a word. And that causes the release of oxygen. So oxygen no longer can bind to that subunit. And because of this, this is called the acid tickle, where it is slightly acidic, denaturing the hemoglobin, allowing it to release that oxygen molecule. And so, in order to regulate the amount of H plus ions, hemoglobin can temporarily bind. I'm just going to draw it here. Hemoglobin can temporarily bind to H plus ions and pull them out of circulation. So it just binds to it, and which raises the pH. So once hemoglobin can temporarily bind to H plus ions and pull them out of circulation, the pH gets raised. And because the pH raises back to a normal range, we need to be able to renature our hemoglobin by the time the red blood cells carrying it get back to the lungs. So it can pick up more oxygen. So this is the point where we're going to basically be able to breathe out our carbon dioxide, which diffuses out of the red blood cells. I'm just going to draw out of red blood cells and out of the bloodstream, because remember we have it in both locations, red blood cell and bloodstream. It diffuses out, going from high to low concentration. And that pulls the reaction towards the left, where we are breathing out, and it's where the H plus ions and bicarbonate come together to form our carbonic acid and releasing the products of carbon dioxide and water. And another thing that I didn't mention in the first video is the basically the role of bicarbonate. And we have bicarbonate already in our bloodstream as a buffer. So some are also stored in vesicles within the red blood cell. So they were pre-existing. And both can absorb extra H plus ions, which increase the pH. And this allows for the renaturing of hemoglobin. All right. So now let's go to a practice problem, which y'all did in class, but I'm going to explain it one more time in case it didn't click the first time. So what happens to your blood pH when you hyperventilate? So we are aware that when we hyperventilate, we breathe in less than we breathe out. So we cannot retain our carbon dioxide. And so we know that more carbon dioxide gets released. So can eliminate option C for now. And so when we release our more carbon dioxide, would the reaction shift towards the right or shift towards the left? The reaction would shift towards the right-hand side. Oh, no, wait, sorry. The reaction would shift towards the left-hand side. That's where I'm going to draw the arrow. Because we are releasing more carbon dioxide. And because of that, we actually had more carbonic acid form. And this releases more carbon dioxide, increasing the pH. And so the correct answer is B. Thank you for listening and being patient with my clarifications. And hopefully this video helped. And I hope you all do well on your exam. Thank you.